Blog Talk Radio.
Winston-Salem, it's Sunday Night Dead.
Paranormal in beautiful Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Hope you all had a spectacular weekend. Thank you for closing it out with us tonight. The last weekend in August as summer 2015 begins to wind down, which is always kind of bittersweet for me because fall is my absolute favorite time of year. But as many of you that listen to this show know, even though we don't really get a winter here in North Carolina, I still hate it. So don't like what comes after it. So kind of sad to see summer going. But we also survived the first week of school here for at least my 5 kids, which is getting a little less chaotic now that they're getting older. And they actually get to start later than I do. So it's a little bit easier this year, but we'll see how that goes. It's always a ongoing challenge with them all. With me from Colorado Shadow Investigations in Colorado, obviously, Luana. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Matt. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Survived week 1, and
nice.
Doing okay. And I see you're able to get into
That's
the chat room. If anyone can hear and are not able to, just keep trying and try to refresh. Sometimes the chat function can be a little temperamental. Plus, you missed some big, interesting events last week. Talk about orb trouble. The whole show absolutely crashed at least we got 90 minutes in, but it absolutely crashed at 90 minutes. Could not salvage any of it. So
I heard about that. Yeah.
So it's I've had things happen every once in a while, and I've as we said before, I've had to ad lib where I've had times where I was the only one on and just kind of had to ramble, and we'll see what happens. And I see somebody in the chat room asking if it's going to work. I've heard it's been better. They did some upgrades supposedly, and that's what was causing the crashes. So we will see. I always blame it on our friends, the Orbs, that I offended very early in the life of this show. But how are things going with you?
They're going okay. It's just been busy. We just got back from Vegas, went out there to do some investigating, and it was nice. It was interesting.
Oh, awesome. Very, very good.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm going to bring on our guest tonight, and I think this is the third or fourth time she's been on the show. I've kind of started to lose count, but always a great guest. Very, very interesting. Sarah, and I'm going to apologize in advance if I butcher Sarah Soderlund, Paranormal Sarah, better known as, and does a whole bunch of different things, all kinds of interesting research in the paranormal field. She works in the area of forensic psychology, which is really, really interesting. She has a radio show. She has a book that's coming out in October. Just lots of interesting work she does, and always great talking to her. Very interesting to get her thoughts on all things related to this field. So without any further delay, let's bring on Paranormal Sarah. Good evening.
Hello. How are you?
Good. Good talking to you again.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you, it makes me nervous when I get an introduction like that, when you say that I'm an interesting guest, because then I think I have to take it up a notch and say something terribly interesting.
No.
But no,
we're nice.
Excited.
we're nice and laid back here, but it's always been kind of going back to through just kind of doing research for the show and kind of just looking at things. I kind of came across your site, and I don't think you were doing some really interesting things. And then when we had you on that first show, it was just a really good, interesting conversation, and so it's just kind of all built from there. So yeah, it's been
well, we like to venture down the rabbit hole, and like you said in that introduction, I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. It's just that Virgo in me, and so I just get bored really easily, and so I find myself keeping busy and always trying to learn as much as I can, and so it makes for good conversation, and so this show is always really good for that. I'm excited. And you didn't butcher my name, by the way.
Oh, good. I saw it on the site, and I'm like, I always refer to you as Paranormal, so I should actually use your real name, and so I as somebody who constantly, I have a very short name, but it's very funny. It must be kind of the linguistics of where I grew up, which was eastern Pennsylvania, a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch there. I grew up with rarely ever having anyone get my name right. So even though it's only not a long, not Slozer, it's not a long name at all. I'm just used to it consistently getting just absolutely totally butchered and murdered in ways you wouldn't expect it to. So,
well, I can empathize. People normally do butcher it, but I've just come to learn that tells me where they're from. Just kind of like you said, here in Minnesota, there's all kinds of Scandinavians. So the ones who pronounce it correctly, I usually can tell that they've got some type of a Scandinavian cultural background, and they do the Soderlund, versus other people that just say Soderlund. Like my married family, they're all in the South, and Sarah Soderlund, what kind of name is that? You know, and that's fine too.
Well, I have, I know this is kind of straying off of paranormal stuff, but there must be some, I've had people, German backgrounds tell me that, it must have been some type of, I don't think we came in through Ellis Island, but, kind of Ellis Island butcher job or something, because that OZE shouldn't be in German. I don't know. I never took German. They said it should be more of an SH, so that's why all the Pennsylvania Dutch like to call it Schlosser or Slosher. And so even though I said that it's on my dad's side, which is German, I've had people with more direct ties to German say, well, that's incorrect. So I don't know. I need to research it more.
Right. Right. One of those days when I give in to the government and I give Ancestry.com my blood, I'll learn a little bit more. But until then, we're just going to have to remain anonymous, you and I.
Gotcha. And Luana, were you on when we've had Sarah on before? I thought you were.
I think I was on. Yeah, I think I was on one of the shows with her. Yes.
Okay.
So
you guys have.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And, one of the things I always do on this, and I know I've asked you this before, but in case somebody else is listening, and it's always something that I keep building on this show, and I should also ask kind of what fits with kind of going down the rabbit holes here is, kind of one of my purposes in this show in the first place is just to kind of kick ideas out there and get things out, because it really is mostly just the realm of ideas that we're dealing with. It's very hard to prove a lot of these things, and so
right.
I think the more we get people's input as to kind of what they're seeing and experiencing, we can at least kind of build a framework and some kind of ideas as to what's going on with other people's experiences. So I know I ask this almost every time to people. So I know you've had experiences. When you get information, and I guess some people call it, psychic or however you want to refer to it as, any extra information, how do you perceive that? Is it audio, visual? How do you get if you pick up any extra information? How do you pick that up?
Usually it depends on the person. I kind of call myself the receiver, and for that, it's always typically I get things that are in my mind's eye is what I call it. It's visual, but it's not necessarily that I'm actually seeing something with my eyes. It's more that I'm closing my eyes and like I would be recalling a memory, visualizing something in my mind's eye. But occasionally I do get, not to whisper any, mental health issues out there, but occasionally I do hear voices. If I'm working with someone or I'm at a certain location, I'll hear things that are unique or that make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. And sometimes, too, it's a lot of empathy, getting overwhelming sense of emotion that doesn't rationally make sense for the situational, at-hand, present moment. Like if I'm standing, pumping my gas and all of a sudden someone stands next to me and I just get this overwhelming feeling of grief and I kind of intuitively get the feeling that this person might be grieving the loss of someone. It can be like that too, but usually for me it's visual. It's that mind's eye perception.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Hang on here. So do you did that take time then to kind of learn how to interpret that, kind of what those
absolutely.
mind's eye images were? And okay. So
yeah,
some of it like symbolic and things?
It's still a learning thing. Yeah.
Okay.
It's still a learning process. It's actually funny that you mentioned that. Of all the questions to mention, just this past week I started my psychic research program that I do with students. And it helps other people who, whether they claim to be psychic or not, I've got kind of a range of students who say they are and some who say they are not. It's the learning process of psychic phenomenon or paranormal phenomenon. And we cover a lot of different topics, but the very first phase 1 of 10, is cold readings. And it's really, really fun for me because I do the readings first so that I'm not suggested by anything that I read later whenever my students submit their readings. But then they submit their readings. We're all doing cold readings on the same people, just a first name and a picture. And it's completely done anonymous. And we submit our readings, and the receiver does a survey, an anonymous survey of how helpful, accurate, and relevant they feel the information is. And then I kind of sit back with each student and talk about what information they received and how they received it and what areas that they can work on. And it's been really a learning process for me as well, because I grew up with a mom and a grandmother who were terribly psychic. And I say terribly because it was ingrained in everything that they did. So whether it was my mom, calling somebody out at a PTA meeting, or if it was, me lying about something as a kid, and, she just always knew, if the phone rang, she knew who it was. She was always very superstitious as well. But it was just a part of that gypsy culture that she shared. And her and my grandmother and my sister were very, very actively psychic. And they would do a lot of exercises at home where I had just told a student today, my mom would say, don't let the information get stuck between your ears too long. It's kind of this Southern saying about don't try and rationalize it. Don't try and logically think about why in the heck am I seeing this or hearing this or feeling this, but instead to just kind of dissociatively let it out or journal it or talk about it or record it. And you can always try and interpret it later, but your job is not to interpret. Your job is just to kind of receive that information and lay it out there. And it's in psychology, we call that dissociative, and it works really well for the journaling process or for psychoanalysis. And so it's kind of interesting to see those parallels, because I think that's a huge part of the process. I mean, obviously confidence and validation and the removal of self-doubt and those things are huge elements too. But one of the big factors is just being able to remove self and say what comes to you. And that's a hard thing to learn. But it takes practice, just like playing the piano or, learning how to read Hotmail code or anything else. You've just got to work on it a little bit. For some people, it's easier than others.
No, that makes sense, and I've actually volunteered on some of that, and I found it very, very interesting. Any like general learnings from working with other people on that just you've observed over time, or any kind of insights from working with those folks?
Yeah, I get a lot of probably the biggest question I get from students and also from people who are wanting to learn how to kind of hone their psychic abilities or their intuition is like, if I enter into a haunted location. Just recently I did an event at the Mounds Theater here in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I didn't want anyone to talk to me or give me any suggestion. And I kind of say that that's a really important factor, is to not be influenced or polluted or be given suggestive thought, because that inserts this additional influence. And it's so much better to be as pure as possible. And so I walked into the Mounds, and I go down to the basement, and I just wanted to sit there for a second. And then stuff starts streaming, and this information is coming to me. And my students will say, how does so much stuff come to you? Or how come some psychics get a lot of information, whereas I'm sitting here and I don't get anything? I'm like as psychic as a darn cold turkey. And it's kind of interesting, because I guess for me is that my mother, along that line of don't let things get stuck between your ears too long, there's also a non-suggestive checklist that you kind of learn to do that is extremely helpful to the process. And for me, it starts off with the nouns, person, places, things. Do I get any people? Do I get any places? Do I get any things? And then I break that down even further. For the people, what relationships, what gender, what age. For the places, any cities, any names, why is this relevant? What is the source? And then the objects, I get, what is the symbology? That's not a word. What is the symbolism? What is the symbolism? What is the source? Do I get emotions? And then I kind of go through my senses, and I refer to 6 senses, but what am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I feeling? What am I tasting? What am I feeling about the reading? And then I kind of go through spiritual. Is this past, present, future? Is this an aura? Is this a certain type of energy? Is this an association? And I kind of have this mental checklist that I'm always going down the list, and it allows me to just say what comes to my mind as I'm doing that checklist, rather than be like, wow, I get this presence of a female, and like to think about it too long. Instead, I just go through that checklist, and as I'm dissociatively streaming, as I'm giving it that potential to kinetic energy, that momentum, I guess, things become more clear, and then I go back to the top again. Okay, that person that I was picking up, that relationship is a sibling, and when I'm thinking of sibling, again, I'm not saying is it male or female, I'm saying what gender is it? Because even in my head, I want to be non-suggestive. I don't want to say, is this person young or old? Are they a child or an adult? What age are they? And
that's
so, good. Yeah, and it's been really helpful for me, and it really helps the students who are just looking to practice that skill. Like, especially in psychometry, I'll have them hold an object in their hand, and I'll go through that checklist, and I'll say gender, age, emotion, feeling, smells, locations, and just have them say what comes to mind. And then I have them open their hand, and we'll say, okay, you've been holding a penny, and you said male. Was this maybe because, statistically there was a 50% chance you were going to be right or wrong? Or is it because you're associating that with Lincoln? Or is it because you knew there was a penny and you associate that with Lincoln? Or we just talk about how we interpret energy and how much of our intuitive process is grounded to the physical realm. Like how much of this is profiling and using, life experiences, and how much of it is just completely intuitive and learning the difference.
That's interesting. Can I ask you, when you were saying that you have emotion that you can pick up, I was just curious if you have, like, how you get control of that. Like, is it something where you have to tell yourself, I can control this emotion? Do you have to leave kind of the general area of where you are? I mean, how does that work with the emotions that you pick up?
For me, it's very similar to the emotions that I would have kind of sourced within my own life, and I use catharsis. I use this kind of channeling technique, and I've used it in therapy, when you have someone who's frustrated and you say, just talk it out, feel it. It's okay. So you accept it, then you acknowledge it, and then you talk it out. And that word out, or like journaling it out or talking it out, is kind of that visualization or that actual process of letting it go and getting it out of your body. And so that's kind of how I see it. It's like, and it's been a good thing, but it's also occasionally bit me in the butt because, like, for example, I always remember this one time being I was in high school. I think I was a high school senior, and I was out on a date with somebody, and I never, ever, ever wanted to tell anybody that I was intuitive because that always, in that time frame of your life doesn't always go over very well. But I was at Red Lobster, and this waitress comes to the table, and she's handing over the cheese biscuits, and I just was overwhelmed with sadness. And I tried to just ignore it and turn it off and be like, nah. But every time she'd come back and say, here's your salad, or bring the food, or check on my cheese biscuits, or refill my drink, it's like every time she came back, I knew that I had to say something to even focus on my dinner. Like, I couldn't even eat. I felt so sick. And I finally just had to get up and say, I'm so sorry, but I have to mention this. This is coming through to me, and and kind of sat there and did a little mini reading, and it wasn't for her, it was for me, just to be able to function. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of how I've always done it, is the catharsis. And it's also served as kind of a validation in a sense, because not everybody wants to hear that information, but I'm a little selfish, and that's how I get rid of those feelings if they're too overwhelming. And so I just do what's best for me. But as I've gotten older, I've learned how to let it go without giving it to someone.
Yeah. That's interesting to hear, because that's something I've had happen where I've been overwhelmed. Like, I'll be fine, I'll be in a great mood, I'll be doing something, and then all of a sudden it just comes over me, and I don't know. Like, I was sitting in a seminar one time listening to the speaker, and I didn't know who or what it was, but it was just like so uncontrollable. I started crying, and I couldn't shut it off. Like, I didn't know how to shut it off. And I'm like, I don't know if I just need to leave the area or where it's even coming from, because I was surrounded by a whole bunch of people. But it was just very overwhelming, and I'm like, I just tried to kind of like, I just kept thinking just push it away, but I didn't know really how to do that. So that helps to hear you talk about that. Yeah,
and you kind of mentioned a really good example of sometimes it can be overwhelming for empathetic or intuitive people when you don't know how to get rid of it, because you don't know the source. You don't know if it's the location or the people or just something that we're not even thinking about. In which case, sometimes I do get up and go to the bathroom, and like you see in a movie scene, it's like you're splashing your face with water, or heaving over the toilet crying, or sometimes I will even text myself. I've gotten to that point where I'll text myself and say, it's 8:08 right now, and I'm overwhelmed with, happiness for no reason at all, and just kind of take it as a note, like, am I about to start my period? Am I, like, crazy? Or is there some relevance here, some synchronicity that I need to be taking note of, and just accepting it and acknowledging it, and then kind of purging it in whatever way I can is most helpful.
Yeah.
It's not always easy.
Okay.
It doesn't make it easy.
I know. I've actually had it just come on out of the blue, and it's like there's been times I just have like walked out of the area just to get rid of it, because I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, like, and so that's kind of a awkward position to be put in sometimes.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man.
Oh, wow. Now, do you get, I shouldn't say a lot, but, do you have issues where you're with somebody or you're met someone and you get fed more information that, I know this is probably going to sound more Hollywoodish, but, that something bad is happening. Like, the thing I always think about is, there's so many people with, like, cancer, and it's like if I had caught it earlier, and I was always wondering, like, getting that kind of message or something that, this person is sick and they don't know it, or something like that.
Right. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's funny. I get that a lot. I usually get that more than anything else. I've always been that way. And I remember having a really hard time with it because my sister, she frequently gets animals, like people's past pets or pets at home, or animal totems, like animals speak to her. She ended up going into veterinary science because that really worked well for her, and she had a communication pathway there that just was pleasant most of the time. Versus I was always seeing very negative things. I was always seeing very violent images, and, there was a chunk of my life that I had a very abusive stepfather, and so then as I was getting older, I kept thinking, why is it always this? Like, why me? And I had talked with my grandmother about it because I wanted to know how to change it. So I was like, man, I want to be like my sister, or I want to be like these darn psychics on TV, like John Edwards, it's always happy things, because it made me a recluse in a lot of ways. I didn't want to meet new people because it frequently was that kind of stuff. But instead I went into forensic psychology, and I tried to embrace it, and it's kind of allowed me to be desensitized to people who have done very horrible things or who have lived through horrible traumas. And it helps me in a sense professionally as a counselor and as someone, doing investigatory work, that I'm not shocked or in awe or emotionally responsive to blood, guts, and gore, but instead I can kind of focus on the details and work around it. But when I meet people that are supposed to be positive, like my best friend's mom, and, this is a person where I'm like, man, this person's got some mental health issues. This person has got some stuff that I don't want to be around. Sometimes I just have to remove that person from my life, which is sad, and kind of minimize the exposure that I have to that person. But other times I try and think about it. I'm not a religious person, so I struggle with this, but sometimes I do try and say, maybe there is a divine spiritual reason that, we're meeting and I'm getting this information. Maybe it needs to be said. Maybe they don't know. I recently had this happen with a really good friend of mine. We were working together on an event doing a paranormal investigation, and it was a 3-day event, and I was kind of overwhelmed with this image on Friday. It bothered me all through the night. I could barely sleep. The next day I was thinking about it. I was overly focused on it. I didn't know if I should say anything. And I mentioned it secondhand to another friend of ours. And I said, yeah, I'm really getting this image that there's a health concern, like in the lungs or in the respiratory area, and I feel like it's being, denied. I feel like he knows that this issue is going on, but he's just kind of swallowing it and trying to work through it when really he needs to get some medical attention. And if he did, it would not be a big issue, but he needs to act now, like there's a sense of urgency. And the middleman, this person I was talking to about it, said, oh, my God, you need to say something, because you would be the third person to say that to him. You would be the third person to say that to him. And so I did. I finally said something. I said, I don't know how to say this to you. I said, but something's kind of come up psychically, and normally that doesn't happen because I've kind of gotten to where I can turn it off and on, but this is overwhelming, and I have to mention it. And so I kind of told him what I was getting, and he's like, I've had 2 friends that I haven't talked to for years call me up and say they had dreams about me, about the same thing you're describing, so I think I will go to the doctor. And they did, and they were proactive about something that could have been prevented, and I felt like, wow, there's that validation for me that I should have said something. But I don't always find it applicable to do that. Sometimes it's not someone that I know very well or that I would feel comfortable saying something to, and then you just kind of have to, like Luana said, you just kind of have to swallow it and deal with it, and that it's uncomfortable, and just say, well, it's part of the job.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and it's interesting. We've talked about this a lot as well, and I've said, I don't claim to have any abilities or things, and I think we've talked about this before, that I have really odd dreams, and we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago that does lots of dream stuff, and the last time I was at Tala, I had, best way I could describe it, I took it as I recorded in this ward a little girl say, want to play with me, and so I happened to say that maybe made a mistake on this, but I didn't hear you last time, but if you wanted to play, I came back, and not long after that, I got a sharp pain through my eye, followed by one hell of a headache in the center of my forehead. So I thought it was possibly somebody that had a lobotomy and was trying to relay that information, since a lot of times they go through the eye socket and jiggle around in the center of your front center of your head. But I think it was this guest that had said, with all these weird dreams, they're trying to communicate. You should try to open yourself up more for it. So I at least tried to send that intent out there, and I talked to Luana about this when it happened, because it was just about 2 weeks ago, and it was very, very bizarre. It happened 4 nights in a row, but basically and you're talking about the forensics thing and seeing unpleasant things made me think about this. It was basically watching, these dreams were watching the circumstances leading up to someone's death. And, like, I knew they were going to die, and I didn't know any of the people in the scene, but there was nothing I could do about it either, which actually was really kind of frustrating. It was actually kind of like the source of the stress in the dream, because you could not have any, I had no role in being able to influence or change anything that was going on. And one was actually an elderly couple that was being poisoned by, I think it was like one of their grandchildren that was really just kind of like very thugsy or hoodsy, whatever you want to call it. Another one was a girl who, a guy's sister who they were all out drinking and I think doing some drugs, and she had overdosed, and they didn't want to call an ambulance because he didn't want to get busted, so they put her to bed instead. And I didn't see her die, but it was like the knowledge was there that she was not going to wake back up. And then another one that was really weird was the last one was actually in the tower, World Trade Center. And the first plane hit, and they're in the second tower, and just a whole group of people, and they're like, we're better off going up to the roof, and they're all in the stairwells going up in the roof. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I just hope, because I kind of knew it was a dream at this point too, I'm like, I just hope I wake up before this plane hits, because I really don't want to see that stuff. So it was really weird. It was like intense, and it was like for 4 days, and it hasn't happened after that. So I have no idea. It was just a very odd experience.
Well, I think, I wouldn't be doing myself or parapsychology justice if I didn't say that, I don't subscribe to coincidence. I just don't. And I truly believe that what happens to us as kind of the human experience is an interconnection between other humans and other energies, and whether it's spirits or not, I think that's left up to, be determined. But whatever information we're getting, we're meant to get it, and those things are meant to happen to us. And not all of them are good. But in my experience, since you bring this up to me, and of all the situations and time frames in the world, this is the conversation that's happening right now, that I've had similar experiences in dreams where I woke up and it was vivid and it was detailed and I was emotionally attached, and I was like, okay, this felt precognitive, but it didn't feel like it was a future thing. It felt like I was almost astral projecting, like there was some sort of an astral travel, and that it was real time, like remote viewing kind of a thing. But I don't know these people, so why would I be viewing this? That doesn't make sense to me. And I remember just writing it down, and there was like 3 or 4 different scenarios, and so I wrote it down, and I'm going through that checklist again, like where was this? When was this? Do I get any names? Do I get anything specific? And writing it down. And then a few weeks later, seeing, I was up late working the night shift at one of the wards, kind of perusing news articles in California, which I don't live in California. At the time I lived in Missouri, but I was looking at stuff on one of their mental health hospitals out there. And something came up, and I clicked on an article, and it ended up being extremely relevant to one of those dreams that I had remembered. And it was like these young children pushing each other down a local storage unit area, like playing in their tricycle, and an electrical cord from up above, these tennis shoes were dangling on. It was a very ghetto part of California. And it fell, and one of the kids ran over and touched it and died, and the little girl was running back to tell somebody. And there was a relevant story to that. And so I started thinking, like, holy cow, I'm getting, like, missing children stuff, like call FBI because I'm going to be useful. Like I felt really excited about it. But it never happened again. I never got those detailed, detached dreams again. I've not had them since. And so I don't know. I would just say journal it. Keep details, and ask yourselves, really, really pull to try and see if any details kind of come to you. And then just keep an eye and ear open, because it might be relevant to something you come across. And then it's just validation. Then it's like, because you've repeated, I think, at least 3 or 4 times in this show already, and I know you mentioned it, we've talked about it in the past because we have, that you're not psychic. We're all psychic. You know, everybody is psychic. We all have a sixth sense and the ability to empathize with one another. It happens in our brain. You know, neurologically speaking, there's stuff that's going on that allows us to sense things beyond our eyes and ears and taste buds and whatnot. And so it's just about learning about it, learning about ourselves. And it's completely subjective. So I think you just need validation, man. Write it down.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, like as far as there's times that I feel like, and I think what you said earlier really makes sense to me, that when information comes in, don't hold on to it for too long. And I think that like there's times when, especially with complete strangers, like I feel like I pick up information, but I never want to validate it, right? I never want to say anything to them. And I think that's probably the piece that I need to expand on and try to like do some of that validation with in a controlled environment to see if I'm on or not, because I feel like I'm always picking up details, but I don't know if it's just my imagination or if it's just I'm truly getting information. So I think that's interesting. Well, I need to start kind of fostering that too.
Yeah, and you do. And what I have to insert there is the validation phase is scary. Like I tell some of my psychic students through the process, it's scary because you're putting yourself out there, and you will be wrong some of the time. Yeah. Maybe most of the time. Yeah. But what it is it's the learning process of what are you getting. Like, for example, I have to give this example because this happened to me recently. I was doing these mini readings for my program, and I was getting the sense that someone had lost a child. And I was like, man, this person is lost someone. They've lost someone under them. Is it a younger sibling? Nope, it's a child. Okay, they've lost a child. And so I wrote that down, and I'm like, okay, be specific. Male or female? And, of course, here I am doing male or female. I should never have done that. But I was like, man, I feel like it was a boy, but I'm not sure. And I want to be specific because this is very meaningful. And then I let it get stuck between my ears too long. And what I did was I said, this woman's a mother. I'm a mother. I've got boys. So maybe she had boys. Maybe that's why I'm getting this message. I'm going to say she lost a boy. And so I sent my reading in, and she comes back and she says, I lost my daughter in a car accident. Her and her boyfriend were killed instantly. So maybe you were picking up on the boyfriend. But to me, I'm like, oh, shoot. No. Really, what happened was I knew she had lost a child, and that was extremely important that I acknowledge that. And I wasn't sure if it was a male or female, so I tried to make a logical connection. And that doesn't always apply to intuition. And so I wanted to respond back, but it's supposed to be anonymous, so I couldn't. But I wanted to respond back with, no. You know, that's not what it was about. But what it serves is just that reminder to myself through that learning process that if something doesn't come through right away, I don't have to be detailed. Or don't think about it too long, because that's not always how intuition works. And I don't want to put my own fingerprint on it. Had I just said what was coming to my mind, it would have been more accurate for her. And so it's not that the information is right or wrong. It's how are you interpreting the energy? And you can't ever learn how to be more accurate or relevant if you don't go through the validation process.
That's such a great point. I know. And I feel like when I don't sit there and ponder about it, it feels comfortable to me. It feels, if that makes sense, it just feels like it fits. But when I sit down and try to make logical sense of it, that's when I just get caught up in it's my imagination or is it not? And so I definitely need to get to that validation, but that helps a lot. So thank you.
Yeah, man. And it's kind of funny. I remember my mom, one of the exercises that she would have my sister and I do, and this just kind of further validates how strange my family was, but we would go to the cemetery in the afternoons for like our lunchtime picnics, especially where I grew up in Parkville. You can walk right down into the downtown suburbs there, and there's the cemeteries are really beautiful. And we would take our lunch and we'd sit there, and my mom would say, okay, let's go be respectful and just pay some people a visit. And we would go up from behind the tombstone where you couldn't see the name or the date or anything, and we'd sit behind them. And we'd kind of just sit there and touch usually it was limestones, but we would touch the headstones and just say hi. You know, hey, I'm Sarah, and I'm here with my mom and my sister, and we're just having peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and thought we would say hi, and, you know, has anyone come to visit you? And it was almost like you're talking to an imaginary friend. But you would see if anything came to you, like if it was a feminine energy or a masculine energy or a young energy. And then after we'd say, all right, well, I'm going to be heading out. You know, it's nice talking to you. Thank you for your time. We would walk on the other side and then give kind of a more formal goodbye. And at that point you would read, you know, this is Cheryl Crow, a beloved mother and sister. And you'd be like, oh, well, I did get a sense that there was a sibling or a sister presence, and now that's written on her tombstone. So maybe I was actually getting like actual language, like something written down. And you kind of learn how to interpret the experience.
Wow.
And it
I like
has
that.
really helped me. Yeah. And there's all kinds of cool little things you can do to hone your ability on how your body and your spirit interprets the energy around you. Because, you know, we're all swimming in it, but not all of us feel the same stuff. And so whatever it is that you get is really important. It's just like, why in the hell am I getting this? And trying to figure out what it all means to you and to the information that's coming to you. So it's a fun process, though. So I'm excited that you're embarking on that. That's super cool. And you too, Matt.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, I had something I wanted to kind of build on that kind of relates to when you were saying about how I think you said it was your sister that had that was getting kind of the positive things, and you were getting
she does.
kind of more negative stuff. And again, this is a generalization, but it's kind of a joke I make on this show is when we talk about our experiences, and it's not 100%, but you know, Luana tends to get nice, positive, warm, fuzzy spirits that come talk to her, and then I go out to places and I get things like Matthew die and stuff like that. So I was just curious, kind of based on your experience, any thoughts? I mean, I know we've had some folks on that kind of do that whole high energy, low energy, that if you're a high energy person, you take, but I honestly don't consider myself a negative or low energy person that would necessarily be attracting bad stuff.
No, and I tend to think that just like an aura, I get really frustrated when people are like, you have a purple aura. In Kirlian photography and just with our bioelectric field, it's always changing. It's always changing. You can listen to Metallica and then go and listen to Claude Debussy, and your aura is going to change. Your emotions are going to change. And, you know, the synapses in your mind and certain parts of your brain are going to fire differently. The world around us is completely influencing us and vice versa. So I never think that one person is a low frequency or a high frequency, but I can empathize with your experience. And how I have interpreted that is my grandmother, she said, Sarah, you should take that as a compliment because you look at a great musician. For example, my mom was a musician at the time, which is why my grandmother had said this. She said, you know, your mom can go up on stage and people can throw tomatoes and scream and holler. They can give constructive criticism. They can throw insults. But your mother is a very strong, fiery woman. She can take that. And that's why she's been chosen and she's done the work and she continues to be on stage, is because it takes a certain type of person to be able to deal with that. And when it comes to spiritual energies, you know, if you're getting the really negative stuff, it's, you know, and this is, again, completely opinion for those of you listening. I noticed Paul Browning in the chat room. He'll probably cringe at this. Spirits on the other side, they have more access to information than we do. We're so limited by our bodies. And it should be a compliment that they see you are able to handle that, because they clearly have a serious, hurtful, possibly violent experience that they want to share, or a story that they need to be told, or a message they're trying to convey. And some people are going to hear it and run for the hills. And it takes a certain kind of person to be able to listen to that message. And you can't read Dr. Seuss in a screaming heavy metal voice and get the same thing that Dr. Seuss wanted. And you can't sing, a Metallica song in a sing-songy voice like this. It just doesn't do it justice. And so when you hear the "get the F out," that's a really desperate, frustrated, kind of violent, traumatic experience that someone is conveying with everything that they have. And what do they have? They don't have arms to flail about and eyebrows to furrow. They're doing it with the energy. And so don't take it personally. Take it as a compliment that you're strong enough to handle it. It's not that they're attacking you. They're conveying a message that that's how it has to be delivered. And so...
And I just want to... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say, so that kind of has always helped me to, for the most part, I'll say 89.7% of the time, remain calm in those situations. Because it's very similar to mental health patients that I have that, if we're walking in and out of Leavenworth and they're screaming and spitting and hollering, it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. It's that they've got something on the inside that just got to come. I don't take it personally. So it keeps me from getting scared, too, which is nice.
That makes sense. I do want to add, too, that even though, so Luana might get nice positive interactions and things, but this is a woman that sleeps in mines and slept in a mine and had, rats running over her, so...
and it's not to say that the opposite is weak.
Yeah, I didn't mean to, but I just wanted to clarify that
right,
I wasn't going there either. I mean,
no, it's just different. It's just different. Sometimes the energies or the spirits or the aliens or interdimensional creatures, whatever it is that you want to say the source is, they know how you might react at that point in time. And I'm sure Luana has heard crazy things and things like that. It's just the majority of the time, right. Some of us are in a darker place, and that's just who we are, Right. So.
Yeah, I get it all.
Is.
There's sometimes that you just get the F off and the get out and, whatever messages need to come through. But, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Right. And I'm reading the chat room. People are really putting some fun stuff in there. So if you're listening in and you're not in the chat, shame on you. Talking about hearing voices in the psych hospital.
Yep.
Right.
Well, the other, the other thing I'll say that has always been, and it's fine, and we've played, we've done it a lot on here. We've done the Cursed City in particular. Stands out, but kind of hearing your name, first and last name, which is, and again, kind of an odd name, followed by die or I hate you, or it's certainly, and again, it doesn't spook me, but it certainly gets my attention and gets my respect, because obviously, it's not saying, hey, happy to see you,
Right. But no, I know what you mean. I can specifically think of one time in particular, and I actually talk about it in my book in a little bit more detail, about having something call me out by name, an audible, right then and there. Not on an EVP playback, but having something holler out, Sarah. And I was like, oh, crap. And just the feeling that I got was like, man, this has got to be a joke. This has got to be somebody in my group wanting to see me pee my pants. And then upon further investigation, realizing that it wasn't, and kind of being like, wow, that's really, it's intelligent, And it's trying to think about how can it get your attention and why can it get your attention. And I don't discount, I mean, you know, many of us in the paranormal field, we laugh about that it's not the dead that scares us, it's the living. But, you know, if they really are spirits of people who passed away, then they're just as manipulative on the other side as they are on this side. You know, it's not, I don't feel like there would be a change in personality just because you lose your saggy boobs or hairy butt. I mean, you're still the same person, you know, and you identify with certain things. And so sometimes it's manipulative, and I have to wonder, like, are they just trying to freak me out, or, you know, what? And then I start thinking about it too much, and maybe that's exactly what they want. They want me to remember them. You know, it's like an Egyptian hieroglyph. They want to be remembered. I don't know. It's kind of cool, but I think that's what brings a lot of us to the paranormal, is there's so much that's unknown, and, man, you have an experience like that, and you're just like, it's more than, you know, coffee and a 9 to 5 and paying your taxes. Like, there's something else kind of cool. So.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why, you know, I enjoy doing this. That's why I enjoy, you know, talking to different people on this show, because the experiences are, you know, there's obviously similarities that run through all this, but everybody's experience is still different. And so kind of piecing that all together, I just find really fascinating. So speaking about the book, let's talk a little bit about that. So that's getting released in October, correct?
Right, October 5th, and it's through Llewellyn Publishing, which has been really nice because they're here in Minnesota, and they had one of their scouts had come and seen one of my lectures on quantum parapsychology. I was talking about quantum stuff, and said, would you want to do a book? And so me and my co-author wrote this huge book on quantum parapsychology, and after going to editing, it didn't do so well. People weren't terribly interested in it. And our hearts were kind of broken. And talking further with the publisher, they were like, well, are there any other books that you're interested in writing? Because we really, you know, readers really like this, personal stories. And I was like, well, I do have a lot of personal stories, but they're personal, you know. And then I kind of sat back and I thought about it, and I thought about it for about 6 months, actually. And I didn't know if I wanted to share some of those stories, because I kept thinking, like, when you're telling someone, they've asked your permission, you know, like, ooh, tell me about that. Whether it's a radio show or it's in person, you know, they ask you about the scariest experiences or the darkest places, and you can say, well, I don't want to go there. Or you can tell them, and there's a sense of permission. But with a book, it's very different. You know, you're just putting things out there, and then people all over the world just know those intimate stories about you. And that was kind of nerve-wracking for me. So I didn't quite know how I felt about that. But then I thought, you know, they always are the same questions. It's always people asking me about, how do I feel about demons, or have I ever, you know, seen a walking apparition or a ghost figure or shadow people, or when I thought, you know, it would be really nice to say, yes, I have. You can read all about it here, because usually I'm just giving someone like a 2-minute clip of that experience, and it really doesn't do it justice. And so you continue to regurgitate the same 2-minute experience, and it kind of falls short. And I thought, well, maybe a book is a good platform to really put the whole experience out there. And much like you do with this radio show, to get people's feedback. And I'm sure that there will be criticisms and that people will tell me I'm a crazy person and yada, yada, but that's to be expected. And to tell me that, you know, I used too many conjunctions or whatever, and that's to be expected. But ultimately I thought, you know what, this is kind of my own personal catharsis. You know, this is me getting it out of my mind and putting it out there and letting other people read that experience and maybe tell me what they think. Because it is unanswered. There are no guarantees, and I don't know what those experiences were 100%. And I can only tell my side of the story and hopefully learn from it. And as a psychologist, that learning process means hearing the thoughts of others. And how does that fit into the whole puzzle? And so I kind of felt like a hypocrite, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. This opportunity came knocking. I'm going to write this book. And so I did. And it does feel good. Now that it's out of my hands and there's like the red button has already been pushed and the codes have already been entered, there's no turning back. It's due out on October 5th. And my dad is so scared and nervous about what I wrote about him. He keeps asking me, like, Sarah, what did you say? What is in that book? But I think that it will be a learning experience for me because it's a relatively easy read. It's, I think 10 chapters, and they're all short stories of experiences that I've had. One of them was, the only time I ever felt like I may have experienced a demonic entity, because not being a religious person, I don't necessarily believe that, but my dad is a Southern Baptist, and his family are all very Christian, very religious, and so if I'm going to describe that, like, black hole, void, fear, energy, this is the one experience that really comes to mind. And the psychological manipulation and the stress that comes with that experience. And so I wrote about that, and I'm just really interested, I guess, now to see what people's feedback will be, because I'm hoping to learn from the experience. Putting it on paper is a big part of that validation for me, and it's out there. So I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. I'm excited. But yeah, it covers all sorts of things. So.
Well, I'll ask on that one that you're talking about, because this story from the first time you were on stuck with me. For one reason, it's something that I don't want to I hope I never experience. Was that possible D-word experience? Was that the one with the grandfather, and you were in the you took refuge in the tub
in the bathroom?
Could you relate that one? I don't want you to review. It stuck with me because I'm like, one, I thought it was really creepy, and two, I'm like, I don't, out of all the experiences out there, I do not want to have that experience. So I don't want you to obviously be giving away everything in the book, but could you high level share that one again?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we don't want to give away the cow, but
yeah, exactly.
But I agree. That's one of those stories that it's so funny that you bring that up. And so, kind of psychologically speaking, for those of you who do believe in demons, that's the one that comes back to mind. That's the one that sticks with you, and that's the one that's always stuck with me. And it's kind of been my bliss point, my threshold, if you will, for how I gauge other experiences, and whether or not, if I'm in someone's house and their chairs are stacking and they go, it's a demon, and I'm thinking like, no, this isn't even close. But again, it's subjective to what I've experienced. And so for those of you listening, if you're into the paranormal, you get an opportunity to experience a lot of different things. I call them symptoms. And it can be mood swings. It can be just being stressful. You go to a haunted location and you feel like it's hard to breathe. You feel like it's a dark, dungy place, even though it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and the windows are all open, and, it's an old Civil War building that's completely airy. And you have people that say, we're near a ley line. Some people say, well, it's made of limestone. Some people say, well, 22 people died here. And I call myself a skeptical believer because I'm always trying to think about, why is this person jumping to ley lines? Or why is this person talking about limestone? This person over here is on a geometrical mandala that they see in the dandelions out front. And all these different interpretations. And I usually like to sit back and be the fly on the wall. And kind of like we mentioned earlier, even if I hear, Sarah, get out now, I'm going to kill you. I don't normally get very stressed. Typically, I think, this is somebody who's desperate. This is something trying to communicate with me that's desperate. And I feel grounded, and I feel safe, and I get in my car, and I, turn on the shiny toy guns, and I drive off. And when I'm done, I'm done. And, usually your paranormal investigations are at night, and the environment is already kind of spooky, and people are walking around quietly, and it's an old dilapidated building. And I've been there, and I've done that, and sometimes it's scary, and sometimes it's not. Usually it's not. Usually it's peaceful. But I was living in this duplex. And I've always had kind of haunted experiences or symptoms, things moving, cabinet doors opening, seeing things in my peripheral. But I usually say I'm seeing things in my peripheral, and that's that. Or I say, I've got a cat, so it could be that. Or people come in and out of my house all the time because I like to cook for people. It could be that. And you rationalize things, and especially in your own home, you try and keep it a safe place. And I usually am not ever, conducting investigations or playing with the ghost box or anything in my own house, because that's where I use the bathroom, that's where I shower, that's where I sleep. That's kind of my sanctuary. But in this particular duplex, I did have an energy that liked to turn off and on the fireplace, which I didn't find terribly safe. And I had, the cabinet doors way up top that even I can't reach because I'm only 5'1", opening and shutting, and things that were much more difficult to discount. But it wasn't fearful. I was never fearful. I was never scared. And I remember that year specifically because emotionally it was a really hard year. I was in the middle of transferring schools, and my sister was having a very stressful year, and so I was frequently kind of driving over there to check on her, and my grandfather had passed away. And it was 2006, and so even today, however many years ago that was, it's still very difficult, when you're grieving somebody, because I really loved my grandfather. He was that person in my life. And he never talked much. He was not a man of many words. But he was always just so kind and endearing. And he had passed away in October on Halloween, actually, which was my grandma's birthday. And this was the following June, because it was spring. My windows were open, and I was getting ready to go to work. I was going to school in the daytime and doing a waitressing at night, and then doing the mental health hospital on the overnight. And so it was 11 in the afternoon, and I was taking a shower, and I remember I was standing there in my pajamas brushing my teeth. And I saw something at the end of the hallway in my peripheral, and I thought, well, it was probably my cat, Cedric. No big deal. Keep brushing my teeth. And then I see something again. And I turned, and I looked down the hallway, and I didn't see anything, but I went to go walk down the hallway, and as I met the part of the floor that goes from the linoleum to the carpet, I could feel it under my feet. And it felt immediately like the feeling you get when you're walking to your car downtown Kansas City on Quintero in a parking garage and you think you're going to get shot or something. It just I felt paranoid. I felt very scared. And I'm like, good God, Sarah, it's 11 o'clock in the afternoon. It's the daytime. You can see the sun shining on the carpet. It's probably just a cat. Go check it out. But then I noticed that Cedric was in the bathroom with me, which is very unlike him because I was brushing my teeth and he hated the faucet. And so then I'm thinking even more. I'm like, oh, crap. But you know what? It was probably just my roommate. Came home and is rushing up the stairs. So I went back to brushing my teeth. I turned the water off. And I see this thing in my peripheral again, only it didn't dart. This time it's just there. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and I was thinking, Sarah, this is it. This is the thing that's in your duplex. It's not going to be scary. You're feeling scared because it's clearly an entity of some kind. And you know it's not living, and it's now invaded your space a little bit, and it's not going to open the cabinet door. Instead, it's going to show itself to you. And that's not a big deal. You know, just look at it, say hi, say bye, I got to go to work, and go on with your day. This is not a big deal. And I'm trying to laugh it off.
Can I ask one quick question at this point? Have you ever been in that situation previous to that, where something has shown itself that way?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I have.
Okay.
Usually it would be more of like a shadow figure.
Okay.
But at this point I'm thinking it's in the daytime. And it's not like creeping out of the shadows like a shadow figure does. Because I had seen an apparition manifest in front of me, kind of like a smoky figure at Mansfield pretty recently to that time. And I was almost thinking maybe it followed me home. But I just felt really uneasy, and I turned and looked. I'm like, Sarah, get over it, be brave, and look. And I looked, and in my peripheral, it was very dark. But when I looked down the hallway, and this was only 6 or 7 feet away from me, it was my grandpa. And immediately I just got this feeling like, oh, thank God. Here I am getting messages from other people's loved ones, and I've always wanted my grandpa to talk to me or to come to me or for me to feel that presence again. I really missed him, and I almost wanted to start crying, the sense of relief. I was happy to see my grandpa that I put my toothbrush down and I went to go walk towards this thing at the end of the hall. And I felt sick. And I stopped, and I just kind of stared for a second, and I said, Grandpa, is that you? And here I am in my head thinking, you know that this isn't your grandpa because you wouldn't have to ask that question. And I'm seeing this thing look at me. And even now, kind of remembering how it looked. I refer to the situation a lot psychologically because that cultural, innate, evolutionary, biological, fear of the gaping mouth, like in The Mummy.
Mm-hmm.
Its mouth looked very strange. And I had a psychic mentor through the PRS in Kansas City tell me that angels and demons and other dimensional entities, when they're speaking to you, it's telepathic. And if you're reoccurring in a dream or you're remembering a dream and you can't remember their mouth moving, it was likely an entity of an interdimensional source, because spirits who've lived in a physical body, you can remember what the mouth looked like, and they know how to use a mouth, and it's not like a kung fu movie, it's in sync, and so their mouth will actually move. If you don't notice a mouth moving, it's something else. And so as I stared at its mouth, I asked again, Grandpa, is that you? And its mouth didn't move. And I remember thinking, what the crap is this? And I stepped back, and just as I started to step back into the bathroom, it started to move towards me. And that feeling of this thing coming at me, and there was nowhere else to go but in my bathtub and curling up on the floor with my cat. And it came right up to the threshold of the bathroom, right that line on the floor that I couldn't cross. And it leaned in underneath the lights in my bathroom. And what happened next was one of the scariest experiences of my life. And I'll let you get the book to read the rest of it, but I reflect on that experience because what had happened, the way that it shifted, the way that it moved, the feelings that I got, it was a completely different experience than something I'd ever had before. And then recollecting on it and thinking, how dare this thing take the form of my grandfather when I'm in a situation of being someone who's grieving and really wanting that to be him. It seemed pretty cheap to me, and it seemed very manipulative, and it seemed very, cutthroat. I secretly always imagined demons to be like Gavin Rossdale and Constantine, where they're beautiful and charming, and like the Bible says, they don't directly put their hands on you; they influence you. Mm-hmm. But that's not how this was. And so it really made me question a lot as far as the paranormal dark side of things go. And it was really scary, and that's what I would have to say is probably my one demonic experience, just because of the form that it took, the way that it moved, how it interacted with me, and the feelings that I had in that moment. It was very scary. And so I don't ever want to see it again. And just talking about it now, sometimes I think, like, here I am, I'm going to go to bed tonight and walk across the floor, and it's a very tactile thing. It was a very tactile experience in like every way, and that's not normal for me. Usually I don't feel things, or even like as a person, we don't typically feel or remember the fear we associate with things like a car accident or childbirth. We don't say, oh yeah, I remember that pain, and really remember it. But that experience is very different. When I recall it, I can feel the floor on my feet, and I can feel how thin my skin felt. It felt penetrable. It felt like the back of my grandma's arm, like that kind of old, stretchy balloon skin, where you just don't feel durable or safe. And my whole body feels that way, even still. And so I knew that it was something unique. And, and I write about it in my book.
Now, I was just going to add here for some folks that have sent me personal messages. For some reason on Blog Talk, I cannot see anything that is getting sent to me. So I'm just letting people know that for people that are trying to contact me out of the main chat room. It's just another lovely feature here. One follow-up on this, though, without getting into the whole piece, because I forget if I must have asked this last time, and I just don't remember, as much as I remember the story, because just to me it's one of the creepiest stories I've heard from anyone kind of involved in this field. Any like ongoing things that happened after that, or did that event just kind of happen and then it stopped, or?
Yeah, it happened and then it just stopped, which is kind of strange because, I have a lot of very spiritual people that would say, demonic stuff permeates your whole life and things horrible just happen all the time, and those are negative attachments. And I kind of jumped to the psychological beliefs there about projection, when you feel like something is attached to you and you are recollecting it often, that you might be projecting it, and therefore crappy things happen. Because we see that with people who have negative, pessimistic views on life. Stuff is always happening to them, versus the people who say, yeah, I've had a flat tire, but who cares, And I have had experiences where I felt like something followed me home, and then a bunch of really crappy stuff happened. And I've had cases that I've worked on where a bunch of really crappy stuff happened, like in a very short, condensed time period around that case. And I've always wondered, what it is that makes that happen, or the synchronicity of that, or if it's just energy has rubbed off on me, or if negative attachments are demonic, or how that all works. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure, because, again, the mystery of it all for me is that I had that experience that undoubtedly was the most terrifying thing I've ever been through. And I moved out of the duplex shortly thereafter, and I moved into a really awesome apartment down the way, and a bunch of really cool stuff started happening in my life for about a year. And then I worked on a case that was horrible, and a bunch of really crappy stuff happened. And I don't feel like they were connected in any way, and I don't feel like it's done anything more than linger with me like it does when I retell it. And I've never gotten a message from my grandfather. And sometimes I worry that I have closed it off in my mind, that I have said, well, my grandfather must know that this had happened, and that if he were to show himself, that I would be immediately fearful. And so maybe I'll just never speak with my grandfather. And that, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, permeates me in a much more negative way than any crappy stuff happening. It pisses me off to no end to think that this entity negatively imprinted me in a way that might deter my grandfather from ever communicating with me. And I think that's even more validating of the demonic experience.
That makes sense. And I'll just add here, I'll get onto my little opinion piece here, because I am on the I am on the religious side, but I don't beat people over the head with it. But I always laugh at folks out there that and I've had debates with some of our fellow hosts on the show on this topic of it's a demon, or it's not a demon because a demon will do this or a demon will do that. Well, at least my background, what I've read, at least according to my faith, the one thing that they're characterized by is being deceptive. So the one thing I think you can pretty much guarantee about something that would be demonic in nature is it's not necessarily going to act by any specific playbook and be very characteristic. So just because it acted in an uncharacteristic way doesn't mean it wasn't.
Right.
So that I just find
right.
that funny when folks weigh in like that.
Well, yeah, I didn't feel a cold breeze, and the lights didn't flicker. I didn't crash my car on the way to work that day. It wasn't like all the crucifixes didn't come flying off the walls. Nothing like that happened. It was very off the wall. It caught me off guard, which kind of like yourself, I think about what I would think a demon would be. I look back on it now and I think that's the way it was done. It caught me at 11 o'clock in the morning on the way to work in my underwear, home alone, in my bathroom. It just sucks. Because I didn't have any warning, but that's how it happened.
The other thing I'll just quick share this that sticks in my mind, and then I know Luana had a question. We had one that it was an investigation. Part of me just is kind of the morbid curiosity now as to I wonder what this place would have been like. But we had a local house, call us and they asked us to check the place out. And almost, I think it was like exactly the day we booked the date to come out there to meet this family, I started having dreams that I have never had before in my life, and I hope I never have again. Like graphic to the extent of coming home from work, walking into the house and seeing your family chopped up, like body parts all over the house stuff, like awful. Like every night the family called and canceled, the dream stopped. So again, on that one, I think, was it warning? Was it something trying to intimidate? I have no idea, but it was very unpleasant. And no idea. They never called back, never heard anything, don't know what the deal was with it. They just called and said that they had stuff going on. Could we come and check it out? Weird dreams happen. They called back and canceled and never heard back from them.
Yeah, and see, again, I don't subscribe to coincidence. So for me, it's kind of always like I would write that down in my little mental book of if in the future I start having really bad dreams and they don't cancel and it ends out to be a really negative experience, that maybe that's my spiritual way of deterring from a bad situation.
Yeah,
because dreams are so important, you know. And as a psychologist, I'm a total Freudian, and I believe that the unconscious mind is far more powerful than we give it credit for. And so, yeah, we don't have all the details and facts on the who, what, when, where, and why, but it's a human phenomenon to have dreams, whether they're precognitive or symbolic or what have you. They happen and they affect us. And for me, I've kind of learned the patterns of my own dreams, and I don't joke around with it. You know, like, I take it pretty seriously. And it's specific to you and just you. So I don't ever just say, it's just a dream. You know, like, I'm always like, whoa, what was that? You know, like, what's going on in my universe that I'm dreaming about this crap? And so, yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with your subtleties there that it was likely you were getting the hung-ho to steer clear of that place. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how I took it. Luana, I know you had a question. I kind of went long here, so.
Oh, no.
Yours.
I was just looking over your information, Sarah, you know, in preparation for the show, and I saw that you're going to be part of an event in October, the Paradigm Symposium event. So I wanted to tell our listeners a little bit about that event and what you'll be doing.
Oh, yeah. Scotty Roberts will be so happy that you mentioned that. The Paradigm Symposium, I was really honored to be a part of that. I'd kind of been hinting at my friend Scotty Roberts. He's a very gifted author. He did a child's book series, and he ran Taps Para magazine for a long time as their editor and graphic design person. And, you know, he's kind of a fun dude that has been a friend of mine. And he's done the Paradigm Symposium, I think now this will be its fourth year. And it happens in Minneapolis, where I live. And so I always kind of felt a little shunned. But the truth is that it's a really kind of upper echelon event where, I mean, you get people that are like serious experts in their field. And so it's a little intimidating. I kind of had been hoping I would be a part of it, and then once I finally got asked to be a part of it, now I'm kind of scared. But I'm also excited because the lineup of this particular event, and it's not like a conference as much as it is an opportunity to go and see people lecture. So there's like Randall Carlson talking about CGI stuff. There's Barry Fitzgerald covering the paranormal stuff. Travis Walton, Fire in the Sky, talking about aliens. There's just people that are the big names in their field. John Ward, he's one of the co-hosts of it. He's an archaeologist overseas who just made worldwide headlines for finding Egyptian tombs that had never been unearthed, and he's, you know, fluent in hieroglyphs and crap like that. Just really cool stuff. And the symposium allows for these individuals to come and take the podium and talk for a few hours about what they're doing in their field. So you've kind of got, you know, cosmologists over here and ufologists over here and physicists over here talking about what it is they're working on, their experiences. And then that way, if you're interested, you kind of touch base with them and, you know, you get to spend the rest of the symposium talking with them, taking notes with them, interacting, networking with them. And so I'm there talking about parapsychology and forensic psychopathy, which is what my dissertation is on for I'm a doctorate student. And that's kind of, I don't want to say specialty, but that's my area of focus. And so I'm doing a lot of work in that field that's not of popular opinion, I would say. And I talk about a lot of concepts that aren't of popular opinion. And at the Paradigm Symposium, it'll be exciting because I'll be talking with other amazing people and getting their feedback on some of the work I'm doing in forensic psychology. And so it's actually held at the Mall of America. They've built on a new Crown Plaza hotel, the Marriott, and so they're hosting it. And so it's a big shindig. There's a masquerade ball. There's all kinds of fun stuff to do on the side. But the main part of it during the day is very dry lectures of just philosophy and discussions. And, you know, I hope to take a big notebook and hear new things, you know, hear new concepts. And for me, that's exciting. And hopefully I do my field justice. I'm really scared. I'm really nervous. Because my husband was like, don't give them too much. You know, some of the stuff you're doing is really cutting edge. You know, don't put it out there, man. And the other part of me is like, if it's not cutting edge, it's going to be boring, right? Because maybe this is stuff other people have heard if I stay generic. But there's not going to be too many other psychologists there, so I'm going to try and keep it somewhat basic, but also a little inception, a little neurolinguistic programming into psychopathy and the world that I like to work in. So.
Yeah, I was looking at the lineup. It looks like
it's scary.
Really an interesting event, though.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's for me, it's fun because there's only 3 women of like, I think there's going to end up being like 25 speakers, and the majority of them are over 55. They're like PhDs and published people in their field, and I feel a little nervous that I'm, you know, this young woman. I'm of the minority here. All lives matter, and I'm going to be talking about unpopular things. So I'm just kind of walking into a hornet's nest, and I'm excited to see how that goes. So, and it'll be streaming live on air, you know, for all those people who want to really get serious. But yeah, check it out. It's the first week in October, so I know October is everyone's favorite time of year, and it gets busy for those of us in the paranormal realm. But it's the first weekend. It's nowhere near Halloween, so hopefully your plans are open. And you can get day passes, night passes. You can do all sorts of stuff. And, yeah, come on down.
How fun.
Watch me freak out. Oh, yeah. It should be good. It should be entertaining at the very least.
I just had the opportunity to stay at that hotel in January. It's a gorgeous hotel. Yes.
Oh, I've only seen it from a distance as I go to IKEA with my family, and I point to it and I'm like, I'll be there in October. So I've not actually been in, but I've heard it's really wonderful. So hopefully I'll pull out some funds and my husband and I can stay there away from the children. But that's wishful thinking. Those of you coming as, you know, definitely do it. But
it was January, so I didn't really venture outside of the hotel. But
well, yeah, you said you hated winter in the opening.
Yeah.
Minnesota, we're not kidding around at wintertime.
Well, my company's headquarters is in St. Paul, so I'm always like a thin line away from the "Hey, would you like to move?" type piece, which strikes fear and terror in the pit of my stomach, like the demon
where
at
9
the end of
months
a
out of the
hallway.
year we have where we have snow, and it's really fun for people who are not winter people, which I never thought I was until I moved here. But my family will call and they're like, we just heard that it's negative 42 degrees there. Are you alive? And I'm like, yeah, we're fine. Everyone's fine. They're just like, how are you walking to the store? How are you functioning? It's like, everybody here is pretty high functioning in that kind of weather. And that's what I like, is that people are bundled and kept to themselves, and you just, you know, hustle.
Yeah. And you deal with it.
Yeah. And you have a lot of hot chocolate and a lot of beer and whatever else gets you through it, and it's nice. Like a lot of Shining movies, we just deal with it.
A lot of hockey and cross-country skiing.
Oh, yeah. That still is very strange to me when I see people outside my window, especially because they practice. I know this is a tangent here, but they practice in the summertime. So, like, I'll be out with my dog, and you'll see people on rollerblades with the sticks just waiting for snow to fall. And it just,
okay.
I don't get it. It's really strange. So any Minnesotans out there are probably cringing. I'm not truly Minnesotan, I suppose, because it's strange to me. I still look at them like they're crazy. And I also don't drive my car out onto the ice, which people do here. I would never do that. That'll never happen.
Yeah, no. And I have experience, we're on a little bit of a tangent here, but I have experience, well, before I moved to North Carolina on business, we used to have to do plant trials up in International Falls, and they'd always schedule those the third week of January. So, I mean, I've seen, I think the worst I saw was like with the wind chill, like minus 75. And so I've experienced it before. It's just not something I would like to experience on a regular basis. Just not. I'll take the heat and the humidity. The only thing I don't like here is have whatever those factors are, and I hear all different theories if it's blood type or CO2 level or what the deal is, but any type of blood-sucking insect absolutely loves me. So I will look until the first frost comes. I look like I have smallpox, and so.
Yeah, and they say that's our state bird is the mosquito here, and I didn't get that reference until I moved here, and I remember being out at the lake and seeing like this cloud, and I was like, "What's that?" And they're like, "Oh, it's time to go in real quick. The mosquitoes are coming," because they come in like swarms where it looks like birds, and it's terrifying because they're relentless.
Oh wow.
So yeah, scary, but maybe that's just exaggerated a little bit to keep people away from Minnesota. I don't know, but it is scary.
That is definitely interesting. Kind of more philosophical question here. Through all your, because I mean you've done a lot of work in a lot of different areas. If you could think of, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here, so like one thing that would be like the biggest learning or something that you really didn't realize about this field or this area that you have learned through the work that you've done in this. Does anything come to mind as like the big aha moment or?
Yeah, well, if we're saying like aha moment, I remember kind of embarking on this journey. It's always been such a big part of my life and spirituality and just, how I perceive the world. But there was a moment when I was a young teenager and I thought, I'm a part of a paranormal team and we have our matching T-shirts and I'm going to spearhead something and I'm going to change the world and I'm going to bridge the gap between science and spirituality and it's going to be me. And it was kind of that self-prophetic moment that we all have where we really feel like we're special. And that changed a few years later when I realized how complex the matrix of the paranormal really is, because some people are so bound by their religious beliefs that nothing is going to change for them. Some people are so bound by the politics of their life that they just cannot, will not, do not accept certain things. And learning that it's not about anyone else, but that it's about me was a really big aha moment because, I used to always say, well, it's about the client, and I really just do this to help people, and I'm all about empowering people, and I'm all about, and I am. That's a big part of my mission. But I can't tiptoe on eggshells around everyone and say that something over here is a demon and something over here is an angel and something over here. And when someone's talking to me and going, oh, your aura's got spirit guides and this is just Bob is one of their names and he's really speaking to me right now, that it's not my place to nod my head and be like, oh, yeah. And to try and say that, there's a right and a wrong and a definitive, because I really used to be on this journey that, like, I was going to be a part of the Parapsychological Association, and I was going to crack the code and, be the next fire starter or something, but that's not the way of it. And to come to that moment where it's like, if the paranormal was to be proven, if the paranormal was to be objectified, measurable, and put into a systematic method of science and empirical laws, and to abide by the laws of physics and Mother Nature, it would no longer be the mystery and the spiritual profound experience that it is. So there has to be, just like religion requires faith, the paranormal requires the essence of the unknown to be there. So in many ways, I have started going to paranormal investigations and not bringing with me my tackle box full of equipment, trying to measure things, but instead have learned that it's about my love for psychology, that it's about learning and understanding myself and what my experience is, and then the same people in the same room with the same symptoms, things flying through the air, that they're going to perceive it to be something completely different, and that's just for them. And to kind of come to terms with that, and that it's okay, that when I listen to an EVP and all I hear is shh, and someone else hears the voice of their son that died, that's not for me. It's for them. And that's really changed, I think, how I look at the field of the paranormal. And when I see people struggling, like, I just want to get that one piece of good evidence, it's like that will, if that were to ever happen, which I believe that it will not, politically speaking, which is a whole other radio show, we can't validate such things. But also spiritually speaking, I don't want it to be something that fits into a pretty box that's measurable and predictable. And I don't feel like the will of human nature and the will of the human spirit is meant to turn a flashlight off and on because we holler out to them in the dark. I don't feel like that's what it's about for me. And so I just appreciate the mystery a lot more. And it's made things more exciting. It's made the grieving process more exciting. It's made going into some of the places like Waverly Hills, where there's these historical places where thousands of people have died. For me, Dachau in Germany was a really profound experience because I don't doubt that there is something else, that the paranormal, if that's what you call it, or the spiritual, you kind of know that there's something else out there. And to just let it be, kind of like a Beatles song, just to close your eyes and just appreciate it is so much more fulfilling to me than trying to tack it down. And I spent a long, good part of my life so far trying to do that. And so it's been an epiphany to not do that anymore.
That's beautiful. I think that really resonates for me as well, because I think when I started as an investigator, it was really more about I want to make sure that the scientific community, likes what I do, and I've come to realize there's never going to be that proof that one
there's
thing that
pissed about something.
Exactly, and you're not going to be able to give people that just don't believe in that kind of thing any kind of proof that will. And so, I guess I've changed my perspective on. I'm not doing what I do to prove to anybody anymore what I know exists. It's like I've had to find my truth, and I've had to and just like you were explaining, I think it's about when you make it about your personal journey for that truth, it just becomes so much more enjoyable and so much more meaningful, and so many amazing experiences now have happened because I don't care. I mean, I'd love to share what I get with other people, but at the same time, I'm not doing it for anyone else. I'm not doing it to please anybody else. I'm not trying to explain what I believe there's not always answers for.
Right.
So I guess that's kind of how I see things as well.
Right. Well, I love that because it's hard to explain, and it's one of those things that, like, my husband, he's a philosophy major, and he's never had a paranormal experience ever at all. And he always uses the analogy that it's like a tornado. Like, he's seen tornadoes on TV, and he's watched the documentaries on tornadoes, and meteorologists are out there saying that it exists even though they're wrong every day of their life. But he's never seen one.
Yeah.
And I love that analogy even more because growing up in Missouri, I've seen them. And it's not the same as watching it on TV.
Yeah.
It's not the same as stepping outside and seeing that come barrel down 29 highway, and you go, I guess I can walk into the walk-in freezer, but is that really going to do a damn bit of good? And it's just beautiful, and it's powerful, and it's got to be a first-hand experience. I really believe that, and so I love when you said that, Luana, that it's about you, and I think it should be that way for everyone. Yep. And so maybe as being a contributor to the paranormal field is I'm just contributing to those out there that are fence riders, that it's a meaningful pursuit, even though there's not a destination. Mm-hmm. It's a lot like life, and it kind of parallels that, is that it's not about, dying. It's the process of being alive. And so it's the pursuit of the paranormal and the experiences that we have. It's knowing that there's not a destination that you kind of have to get over. And I like that. And that's been
Exactly. Yeah.
That's been a change for me.
Yeah.
I'll just quick
and I think
share in this.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Luana. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to make a comment because I think that's what I look at now, where I use really hills and places like that. I just look, when I go through any place anymore, it just gives me that sense of appreciation, and I just like being in those places. Like, it doesn't matter, how many people died or, how scary it's said to be. It's just really like appreciating the history of each location. And when I went to Waverly Hills, it was like more about, I wanted to know like what life was like if you were there, and just not seeing the dark, terrible, awful side of things necessarily, but just imagining like if those walls could talk, what would they say, and what was life like? And I don't know. It's just a different perspective that I think I've taken on too. Sorry, Matt, I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine. I just kind of wanted to weigh in on my side because this will probably sound a little flippant, but I'm just kind of happy to be here, and I mean, honestly, I got to go back to one of my. I got to go back to one of my.
That is the cutest thing ever. Happy to be here.
I got to go back to one of my quotes when I first started on this show. I got set up into this. This still is like seared into my memory, but I got set up to on another show on the program on another night. To get into this debate with another individual who's much more well-known than me. And I was just getting attacked, and part of the things I was getting attacked on were, well, your approach is never going to get the validation of the community, and you're never going to get respected by the community. And the way that I word it down to is, whether there are 1 million people who follow what I do or one other person that follows what I do, it's not going to change what I do because I'm doing this for incredibly selfish reasons. I'm doing this because I enjoy this. And if I can help other people through doing this, great. I love helping other people, but I'm doing this out of my own interest. And really the only reason why I started sharing and kind of getting out there, which ultimately led to the being on the show, is because when people found out that I did this stuff, I would just get asked, kind of like what you were saying, Sarah, about the people asking all the questions about your experiences, people would just start asking, well, where do you go? What places were you at? What did you do? It's like, so, I might as well just go ahead and put it out there, and then anyone who's interested in it can kind of follow what I'm doing, and anyone who's not and thinks I'm a nut job can just kind of move on. But it's always been on me that there's been really no grand end game to this other than I've always been interested in this type of stuff ever since I was a little kid. And once I found that, people actually do these kind of things and you can actually get into some of these buildings that I love getting into and stuff, it's just been a fun ride. So I really don't, I take it very, very seriously. I don't want to give anybody the wrong idea on that, but it really is just that. I'm just enjoying it and kind of doing my thing.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Which kind of pales to what both of you guys have said, but girls, I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's a big part of it is the history. Like I've told my husband that when we travel around, obviously if we were to go to Scotland, I want to go to Edinburgh and I want to go to the Loch Ness and stuff like that. But stepping inside some of these old buildings that have this amazing history, and you feel something more profound in yourself. Like I love going to Gettysburg for that reason. I love standing out there on the battlefield and thinking, there are ghosts here. Whether you see them or they holler out to you, just hundreds of years, you think it's such a small blip that people were dying here, people were fighting for things here, and it puts you, I think, in the perspective of your own life and your own present time, and that's so important, So a lot of the places that you go, like you said, the experiences that you have may not be paranormal in nature at all, but they're more human, and that is important to be in touch with.
Awesome. Luana, I'm sorry. I just had to jump in with my little happy to be here. I didn't know if you had any follow-up.
I love that.
Oh.
I'm just happy to be here.
No, I was just making some comments too, so I'm good.
Well, I want to make sure we have enough time to cover this. So the things that you're involved in, anything in particular you would like to share as far as anyone listening tonight that would like to follow what you're doing, or links for the book or the show you do, if you wanted to talk about that a little bit, or anything you want to do.
Well, I see here on my clock I've got like 5 minutes. So if you go to sarahsoderlund.com, SarahSoderlund, or if you just Google Paranormal Sarah, it'll bring you to all of the social sites, Facebook and Twitter and that sort of thing. But I have a lot of really fun stuff going on. If you're interested in the paranormal and the psychic phenomenon sort of thing, I'm doing a grant research project right now called my Psychic Student Research Program. And we talk about all sorts of things. We do psychic viewing and psychic work and psychic workshops and remote viewing and auras and dream interpretation. There's all sorts of different phases, and I do it every year. I do it, and then I just continually keep all of the research and submit it every year for a grant. And usually it gets turned down, but I continue to do it because I enjoy doing it. But I'm always taking volunteers for the readings that every year I take participants that are interested, and so that's always fun. But I put a lot of the videos that we do on YouTube, and they're public, and so if you find me on YouTube, you'll see a subscription channel there for the Psychic Student Research Program. And as we go week by week, I cover things that we're talking about, things that are relevant, and my advice or things that I would suggest. And it's always really fun to just learn from that group of people. We're always kind of creating a dialogue that's really good for a positive learning environment for anyone interested in that sort of thing. And then we had mentioned the book. It comes out October 5th, but you can do pre-orders. You could do pre-orders through Luana Publishing, and you can also check it out. It'll be on Amazon here very shortly, but Barnes & Noble and Amazon are the big places that are going to be carrying it. And if you have a local bookstore, you're in like the Midwest area, that wouldn't be too terribly difficult for me to travel to, request me at a bookstore, and I'll always make it a point to try and make events in that area to come do book signings and scary stories and things like that. Here in Minnesota, I'm doing quite a few of those. But then also the big head honcho is the Paradigm Symposium. So if you perhaps are interested in Haunted by the Abyss, the name of my book, or you're interested in forensic psychology, what I do in my day job, then the Paradigm Symposium is a good place to kind of get more information on some of those topics, on ufology, on forensic psychology. But as I had mentioned, for forensic psychology, I'm working on my doctorate, and I cover psychopathy. And for those who are unfamiliar with that term, it's the study of psychopaths. And so I specialize in the assessment and treatment of violent psychopathic offenders. And I do a lot of independent study and independent research for my dissertation, which includes a lot of correspondence with certain serial killers and interviews with certain serial killers. And I also do a lot of fun bantering and debate and interviewing of other forensic psychologists who specialize in that field on my radio show, Mysteries of the Mind, on Intrepid. And that's every Thursday at 5 Central Standard Time. So for those of you in Matt's part of the world, it would be 6 o'clock. But it's on Intrepid. You can download the app on your phone. You can tune in mobily. You can download the podcast, save them for later, listen to them on your own time. But Mysteries of the Mind, I have to throw out there, is a unique radio program because I utilize neuro-linguistic programming. It's one of the tools that I use in counseling and in my life coaching sessions that I offer clients. If any of you are looking for life coaching sessions, I do those online via Skype. I have clients all over the world. But neuro-linguistic programming and hypnosis, all about language. It's a fun platform to have a radio program where we use that. And we talk about all sorts of really fun things. I just got done doing a series on evil, talking about evil in the mind, altruism, violence, all sorts of military interrogations. But then this month, September, we're going to be talking about aliens. So alien abduction regressions, alien encounters, interdimensional stories, narratives. And neuro-linguistic programming is kind of scary in a sense that we really do go into your mind. Mysteries of your mind is really what the show's about. But you can check that out, again, on Intrepid Radio, Mysteries of the Mind. And then for anybody in Missouri, in that area, in the middle of October, I'll be at their huge annual psychic fair, the PRS Psychic Fair held by PRS of Kansas City. That's the Psychical, I hate that word, I apologize, Psychical Research Society of Kansas City. And this is their 45th year for the organization. They have just wonderful people that come in from all over the world, and they do psychic readings. And I usually don't do psychic readings that much anymore, but my sister and I will both be doing psychic readings together. So all month, or September and October, leading up to the psychic fair, I'm running a bunch of really cool divination specials and things that you can find on my website at sarahsoderlund.com. And then next year I have stuff, but really, if you're interested, I have a newsletter, so just email me, check me out, and get tuned in. And that's it.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Well, as always, it's always great speaking with you, and great talk again tonight.
Yeah, I had a good time.
Awesome.
I love this show because you guys are interactive and you're kind and you're respectful, but you're also engaging. And so that's a hard combination, you know. It's like an oatmeal chocolate chip cookie. You just don't see it that often, but it's really good. You know?
That's awesome.
So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so
very
much for being our guest. Yeah, you're just such a pleasure to listen to, and so fascinating. So.
Well, thank you guys, and hopefully I'll be on again sometime in the future. And until then.
Oh, absolutely. We just need to work out the communication purgatory, as you called it, that we were in with our messages not getting. The show was probably delayed by about 2 months because messages weren't getting back and forth. But I'm glad we were able to link it all up and make it happen.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone. Well, we will see you all next week. Have a fantastic week, and I guess it'll be pretty much midway through Labor Day weekend when we talk to you all next week. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
menu in his hand, walking through the streets of Soho in the rain. He was looking for the place called Lee Ho Fooks. Gonna get a big dish of beef chow mein. Ahoo, where was London? Ahoo, ahoo, where was London? Ahoo, you hear him howling around your kitchen door. You better not let him in. Little old lady got mutilated late last night. Werewolves of London again. Ahoo, werewolves of London. Ahoo, ahoo, werewolves of London. Ahoo. Hairy-handed gent who ran amok in Kent. Lately he's been overheard in Mayfair. You better stay away from him. He'll rip your lungs out, Jim. I'd like to meet his tailor. Ahoo, werewolves of London. Soderlund Cheney walking with the Queen, doing the werewolves of London. I saw Soderlund Cheney Jr. walking with the Queen, doing the werewolves of London. I saw a werewolf drinking a pina colada at Trader Vic's.